A couple of teens who were up to no good started making trouble in an Atlanta neighborhood when they took pride flags off a building, started doing wheelies around on their scooters, and tearing up the flags. They were cutting them up. They're now facing hate crime charges. And this is more than just a one-off. We've already seen stories where if you drive your truck over the ground and it leaves a mark, they're going to accuse you of a hate crime. And what we're witnessing with this story and many others is the politification of law, the entrenchment of communist ideology. Now, it's not necessarily a one-for-one with communism. We may say it's like that because it's in the same parent tree, but obviously there's a distinction between wokeness and communism, despite the fact we might argue that wokeness is an umbrella above communism or that they're deeply related. My point is this. They're not saying we are putting protection for communism in law. They're using a circuitous method by which they are. So with this story, what you basically have is a couple of teens who, admittedly, look, don't steal other people's stuff, don't vandalize. But the fact that they're facing such serious charges for what otherwise, in almost all circumstances, would be brushed off as a teen prank with a slap on the wrist, these kids are facing real prison. Now we take a look at New York City. And you've got the election of Zoran Mamdani. This guy has pledged to create an office of the LGBTQ and increase anti-hate policing 800%. I'll tell you what they're really saying. The Communist Party will be entrenched in government, and if you swear allegiance to the ideology, you will get political power. This is how all communism works. Example. If you steal an American flag and burn it, you will not get in trouble. You won't. They're going to say, what are you talking about? The flag cost you $20. So they burned a flag. What's the big deal? You steal a pride flag and burn it, they'll threaten to put you in prison for years. In New York, they're going to create an office in the government. And what does it mean to be LGBTQIA, right? Now, obviously, the first LGB means something, but the rest of it could be literally anything. In fact, we literally had a guy come on Timcast IRL who was like a 35-year-old, 6-foot-tall white man who was like, actually, I'm queer too. It's just saying, I pledge myself to this ideology. You assert publicly. It is conversion. They don't care if you believe it. They don't care if it's true. They lay you down. They put you on your knees and say, renounce your God. And I mean that figuratively. And if you do, you can get political power. Now, New York, with the 800% increase in law enforcement against hate, you know exactly what that will mean. Now, this guy Zoran said, oh, because of Jewish people who were attacked. That's not what it's about. That's an excuse. Targeting the right because the right has called them out on their hypocrisy. He's plugging that gap saying, you are correct. And now he's going to use it as a justification to police people who oppose their ideology. Here's the story from the Post-Millennial. Teens face hate crime charges for cutting up LGBTQ pride flags on Pride Crosswalk in Atlanta. Witnesses claimed to have observed 6 men stealing pride flags, hanging in front of the bar, and using knives to cut them. I will be the first to say, and I always do, the issue, in my opinion, is not that, actually, I'll put it this way. Don't steal stuff. I'll just leave it at that. These kids deserve some kind of punishment. You stole someone else's stuff, okay? But hold on there a minute. Like I said, the cops would show up and say, how much the flag cost? Pay them $20. That's typically how things go. You destroy someone's stuff, and they're going to be like, depending on the scale of the cost, now these pride flags, $20. Let's be fair. Let's say 100. Maybe they're custom ordered, whatever. Really? $100 in damage? What judge is going to be like, they're going to say, why are we wasting our time on this? There's bigger fish to fry. But when you oppose the cult, they will crush you. They'll call you a suppressive person, perhaps. Atlanta police have arrested 4 teens early Tuesday morning who have been accused of defacing pride flags outside a popular LGBTQ bar in Midtown. Authorities of the defendants may face hate crime charges, which could result in penalties, including jail time. 2 suspects remain at large. According to the Atlanta Police Department, officers responded to reports of vandalism at 1:40 a.m. after witnesses claimed to have observed 6 men, despite the fact that several of them are minors, stealing pride flags hanging in front of the bar and using knives to cut into them. The teens were also seen performing motorized scooter stunts on the notable rainbow-colored crosswalks at the intersection of Piedmont Avenue and 10th Street. So looks like we got video, indeed. So he's on a scooter. They're riding on scooters. They're doing wheelies. Not really doing a whole lot more than that. Homeboy's got a pride flag here, and it looks like two of them. And it looks like they're going to start slicing them up. Hate crime charges for vandalism. That's crazy. They say while contacting authorities, a 911 caller said they're in the middle of the street popping wheelies, tearing up flags. The 6 teens fled on scooters when officers arrived on scene. Shortly after, 4 of them were apprehended, while 2 teens remain at large. Surveillance video released by APD shows the group on scooters at the rainbow-colored crosswalk with pride flags in hand. We get it. We watched the footage. They say that during a press conference, APD Sergeant Brandon Hayes stated the department takes the community very seriously, and we want to make sure residents feel safe. Detectives said the teens traveled to Midtown Atlanta with the intent of conducting vandalism. Georgia enacted a hate crime statute in 2020, allowing judges to apply additional penalties if a crime is proven to be motivated by bias against a victim's race, religion, national origin, orientation, or other traits. A misdemeanor offense carries an additional 6 to 12 months in prison and a fine up to $5,000, whereas felonies can result in 2 to 12 years. Well, here's our good friend Zoran, who's in the press, and he's got on his website LGBTQIA protections. But what is that really? He says, the Mamdani administration will protect LGBTQIA New Yorkers by expanding and protecting gender-affirming care citywide, making NYC a sanctuary for LGBTQIA, and creating the Office of LGBTQIA Affairs. Now, what is that office? That basically states, call it whatever you want. They're using civil rights for protected groups as their means to create an ideological office within the government. And so it begins. Now, the other day, I said, good, I'm glad he wins. New Yorkers deserve this. But you know what? Mike Cernovich made a great point. It can always get infinitely worse. And, after thinking about it, I have reconsidered my opinion on this, despite the fact it's only been a few hours, just from some light reading. My concern is, and this was pointed out on the show, when communists take over, they never, because they're psychotic, they will never accept responsibility for their bad decisions. They will keep making bad decisions, burn everything to the ground, and Venezuela is a really great example. When you go to a socialist and you say, Venezuela is a great example of why you should not embrace socialism, because they used to be the wealthiest country in South America, now it's miserably poor and some of the highest murder rates in the world, if not the highest. Not per capita, though, but the highest murder rates in Caracas. And the response they'll give you is, actually, that's the fault of the CIA interfering intentionally in their government to make them poor. I've been to Venezuela. I can tell you exactly what's going on. I went to a cell phone store to get a cell phone. And, in the United States, I walk into a T-Mobile and I go, I want that phone. And they go, okay. They say, I'll be right back. They go in the back, they walk out the phone, put it on the table, and they start filling out paperwork. Yeah, I know. It's kind of annoying to fill out all the forms and sign it. And they hand you the phone, swipe your credit card, good to go. Not in Venezuela. When I was there, admittedly, this was 11 years ago. You go to the cell phone store, and first you have a person, and you tell them what you want. And you say, I want to buy a cell phone with this plan. And my guy, of course, was translating for me. And say, okay, you need to go to you need to go to acquisitions. So I walk upstairs, and there's a guy sitting at a counter with a magazine. And he says, which phone do you want? And you go through it, and then you say, I think that one will do. Go to say, okay, let me write. He writes you up a ticket. Hands me a ticket. He says, okay, now you need to go to warehousing. And then I go, okay, I walk to the next guy, and I say, here's my ticket. And then he says, okay, I'll be right back. And then he comes out with the phone and says, here's the phone. We're going to bring this down so you can buy it on your way out. But do you need a plan? Yes? Okay, you're going to need to go to acquisitions for plans. Walk to the next person. What kind of plan are you looking for? I want this one. Okay, now go to the next person. This person then gets you a SIM card. Then you go to the next person. This person packages and bags it, hands you the bag, and says, now you can go to checkout. No joke. There was like 7 or 8 people I had to talk to. Why? Because the government mandated the creation of jobs. They said, we need jobs in this country, so just make jobs. That way, we can distribute wealth. So jobs that don't need to exist are made to exist. That's why they're poor. Because instead of these people falling into the system that needs them most, they just take a government-created job, centralized, that doesn't actually solve any market problem. What they are going to do is arrest people who oppose them, and they're going to say, but they're bigots. But it's hate crime. Those kids who tore up those flags, that's not about being gay. I guarantee you, these kids probably don't care for the most part if a dude's hooking up with another dude. What they don't like is wokeness as a movement and ideology. Now, I'm speculating, but that's why with the rainbow flags on the ground, they're more addressing the cultural elements, not a single person in particular. So if the crime was motivated by whatever these things are, it is only because they have given themselves the power to do it that they will claim taking a flag of an ideology, which includes a black and brown stripe. That's the game they're playing. Oh, he tore it up because he hates black people. He tore it up because he hates gay people. He tore it up because he hates asexual people. You make your communist flag protected under the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and the government creates a hate crime based on it, and you will get communism. There is no reality where there is a stable, happy medium. There is no position by which we can rest and say, we are done. Civilization gets no retirement. And for many people, they long for the day, even at a young age, where they'll have $20 million in the bank and they'll say, I don't have to do anything. I can only do what I want to do. Now, interestingly, the money is not an issue. It's funny. I'm watching Ironheart, the new show on Disney, and Riri Williams is the character. She's a young black girl from Chicago and a black woman. And she builds her own suit. And then basically the premise is she's like, Tony Stark was a billionaire. He wouldn't have been able to do it if he wasn't, which is hilarious considering in the first movie, the bad guy says Tony Stark was able to do this in a cave with a box of scraps. That's what made the narrative great. That Tony Stark was a dick, but you put him in a mountain cave with a bunch of scraps and he built this powerful energy source. Where are we now with wokeness? In the show, she's actually saying he was only able to do it because he was a billionaire and he could buy all these things. Indeed. What I'm saying with this is, where we go, there are a lot of people that if they had $1 million, right? I'm going to tell you guys a secret. You ever go to an investor meeting, you might encounter this question. Tomorrow, you wake up and you've won $1 million. They show up to your house. They say the money's already in your account. Here's a man from the IRS with a badge and everything to prove it. The money is clean. It's yours. There's no trick. What would you do with a clean $1 million? What's your answer? Here's the secret. The reason they ask this question is because they're trying to avoid someone who says, oh, man, probably pay off my debt, buy a house, take a vacation. They say, oh, yeah, man, me too. You know where I'd go? I'd go to Monaco. And they shake your hand and say, we'll be in touch, and they'll never call you back. What they want to hear when they ask you this question is, if I woke up and I had $1 million tomorrow, oh, man. The first thing I'd do is hire some developers to start working on this app that I've already laid out. Here's my pitch deck. Everything we want to do and why we want to do it, if only I had that $1 million to hire the team to build it. Then they'll say, okay, let's talk. Now, in reality, nobody really wants to give money to somebody who says, if only I had the money. So actually, what they're really looking for, the best case scenario is not just to explain your project, but say, well, to be honest, I've been coding this app. Here's the alpha version of it. I'm not really a good coder, but I had this idea. I had to get it made. I could certainly use some help. Maybe I'd hire somebody. They'll say, we'll hire that person for you. You want to build something? You want to do something? That's what we're going to do for you. There are a lot of people that will get that money, and they do literal nothing. These people, there's an overlap with communists, and they want to create a world where you have to work so they don't. It's in every message they post. It's in all of the writings they make. And it's what's laughable is they say the worker should be entitled to the fruits of their labor. The worker. I'll tell you this. When you have Zoran's government-run grocery stores, affordable housing, and a contractor comes in and says, look, I got to pay my guys X amount of dollars. We're not doing this job for less than, $5 million. They're going to say, oh, we're being ripped off. They're already saying it right now. When they say grocery stores are price gouging, they're saying that the workers of that store, it's a small business. Most of the stores in New York are small businesses. The workers are not entitled to the fruits of their labor. They are told profit means extra money to buy a Ferrari, when in reality, for the overwhelming majority of business, profit means the extra money after cost that I get to use to pay my salary. No, when you pay your salary, it's not profit. That's not profit on paper. So when you charge 25 cents on top of your $3 a gallon milk, they say he's getting 25 cents profit. Eliminate that. Well, no. That 25 cents is for the person who owns the small business, so they have money to pay their bills and live their lives. But communists don't care. This may be one small story in a long chain of stories, but I'm telling you where we're going with the Zoran guy and what we're seeing right now. The end result is offices of DEI or LGBTQ or whatever, which is just a fancy shield for Communist Party politics. I'm going to leave it there. Smash the like button. Share the show with everyone. Stay tuned. We got more coming up for you today, and we'll see you all in the next segment.